Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Laughing Through the Pain podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor.
I'm Marianne.
And today we are talking about taking responsibility for your actions. This was kind of sparked from I think it was a screenshot I saw from Twitter, or a post I saw on Twitter, because Twitter's not a cesspool of horrible things. Anyway,
it's solid.
Anyway, the post kind of says this: you are not antisocial. You've healed too much not to raise the price of what it costs to access you. Now, I understand kind of what they're going for. Like, having emotional boundaries is important, but, like, having emotional boundaries and being antisocial are two very different things. And if you're not spending time with people because you've raised the price of what it costs to access you, then honestly, in the long run, you're really only doing more damage to yourself. So, just kind of based on that, we kind of figured that this is an important topic to discuss, because I think there's a big problem in today's world of people not really owning up to their behaviors, despite the things that have happened to them. And so that is kind of the topic of today. So,
plus, being antisocial is not this personality quirk. Being introverted doesn't mean that you're antisocial. Mm-hmm. Being shy doesn't mean that you're antisocial. Being a homebody doesn't mean you're antisocial. To be antisocial, that is a disorder.
It's also, antisocial personality disorder is also one of the factors that makes up a serial killer.
Yeah, a sociopath.
Yeah.
That's another way to refer to it, is sociopathy.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know if I'm pronouncing that right, but there's certain behavioral qualifications that you have to meet in order to be diagnosed. And one of them is posing a threat to yourself or to others around you.
Oh.
So it's kind of frustrating how we throw around terms for disorders like, oh, I'm so ADD, oh, I'm so OC, oh, I'm so antisocial, to describe quirks over legitimate disorders that need to be properly diagnosed and treated accordingly.
Yeah.
So can we please stop doing that?
I know. I know someone who has OCD, and, like, you know, she's done a lot of work to try and, like, help herself to get over it. Not mm-hmm. to get over it, but to, you know, help the symptoms.
Yeah.
But, like, it can be, like, OCD can be very life-ruining. And yeah, and, like, I feel like when people are like, oh, I'm so, like, ADD, ADHD, like, you don't know really, like, the depths that go into it. Like, I've seen a lot of TikToks about, like, having ADD and ADHD, and, like, kind of, like, it's not just, oh, I can't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I have a short attention span.
I have a short attention span. Like, there's a lot of more emotional aspects that can go into it, too, mm-hmm. which I thought was really interesting.
It is.
But, I mean, all that to say, like, just throwing around terms like, oh, antisocial and stuff like that, it's like, if you're truly antisocial, then I think you need to see a therapist.
Yep. Get some help.
Go to the police.
Or go to the police. Turn yourself in before...
before something bad happens. No. But anyway, the quote was just, personally, I thought was kind of stupid. Like, to be frank, because, like, you've healed too much not to raise the price of what it costs to access you. Like, yes, have healthy emotional boundaries with people, but just because you have emotional boundaries and healthy boundaries, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever, like, if you're deliberately, like, not spending time with others just because, you know, you've raised the price of what it costs to access you, like, it's a poor excuse for yourself.
Yeah.
And, like, you're not really, I don't know how to say it, like...
It's very self-involved, because we as humans are social creatures. We always have been. Yes, there are shyer, more reserved, more introverted social creatures, but we were never put in this world to do life alone.
Yeah.
To be hermits.
Yeah.
To be cut off from society. It's like, yeah, there's a time and a place for some seasons of solitude. Some alone time can be really healthy, but not at the expense of hurting others, affecting your relationship with others.
Right. Like, I think a lot of people lack a discernment of who to pick as their friends. Because I was talking to, there was this guy who worked at the company that I work for. He doesn't work there anymore, but he was a younger guy. And he was just talking about how he didn't need friends because everyone is just a backstabber, and like they're not like nobody's real with you about blah blah blah. And like I think that's a very sad mindset to have, because we're, like you said, we're not meant to be alone. And when it comes to the way we deal with being hurt, that is far more important than just closing yourself off because you're like, oh, I've been hurt.
Yeah, and it shows the dangers of generalizations, because if you have a bad dating history, and trust me, I have a bad dating history. I can speak on behalf of those who have had their fair share of bad apples. It runs the risk of generalization. You date a few pigs, that leads you to assume, oh, all men are pigs, all men are trash, all men are cheaters, all men are liars, all men are going to hurt me. And then on the other side of the coin, the same is true. A man could have a bad dating experience or several bad dating experiences and say, oh, women are witches, women are mean, women are nasty, women are cruel. And it's like, no, generalizations are very dangerous, because then you're lumping in the good apples with the bad apples, and then all the fruit is going to be spoiled, and then you have to go to Costco on a Saturday when it's very crowded. I lost my analogy. The point is, no, I'm kidding. But
Costco on a Saturday.
Have you been to Costco on a Saturday?
I have, and it's busy.
A madhouse. People punching each other over samples of the honey butter, and the honey butter is very good. It is very good, but it's not worth punching someone in the face and getting a battery. Eleanor's like, speak for yourself, Marianne.
I would deck someone in the face for a raisin. Come on.
For a Klondike bar.
I'm just joking.
She is.
But no, you're so right. Like, generalizations are a dangerous game to play, and like, kind of going back to something that I think I was trying to say earlier, but like,
Home Alone face.
Shoot. Dang it, I totally just, the train went off the tracks and exploded.
Exploded. The train exploded.
It exploded.
It didn't just break down, it exploded.
Me, when I try to think about anything, it's just like, psh.
123 casualties. Was it about
Toast died at a fire.
Oh no! Our son! Was it about generalizations?
I don't know. I totally had a point to say, and I don't remember what it was. Totally just complete out of my brain.
Dabbed out of your brain.
Said goodbye.
I'm sure as soon as we move on and stop thinking about it so much, it'll come back.
I know, because like I like feel it on the very tip of my brain, and it's like,
do you want to pause it and listen to what we have so far, and then maybe it'll come back to you?
Oh, we could.
Hold, please.
Okay. So I don't remember the point I was trying to make. We just listened to the last 10 minutes of what we just talked about. So we're just gonna continue to move on. Anywho, a quote that a friend of ours, actually she's been talked about on the podcast a few times, but Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret. Even though she's many episodes behind, this is a call out to you. A quote that she said is, "Life is 90% what happens to you and 10% about what you are going to do about it." This kind of gets more into the taking responsibility for your actions as portion of the show. But I think that's very accurate. Like, bad things happen to everyone. I don't think anyone lives a life where something bad does not happen to you. But you could either take those bad experiences, shut yourself off from others, and like never go outside again, or never make real friends again. But that's not a healthy way to live. And like, there are good people out there. Like, I am lucky to have met a lot of good people in my life, but I've also met people who are not good people. And the minute that a disagreement comes up, then they're like, yeah, we're gonna, drop you, stuff like that. And like, that does happen. And believe me, it sucks. But that didn't mean that I was gonna give up on making friends and, getting to know people. Something that I think is a big problem nowadays is people don't really take ownership of their actions. And like, they don't really truly try to deal with their problems.
Facts
machine. Like, are you like, I don't know, a lot of interactions or like conflicts are you really listening to others? Are you simply reacting? What's that thing that you say sometimes? It's like reaction versus
responding.
Yeah. I forget
Yeah, it's anyone can react to anything, but what's more important than a reaction is a response. A reaction is what hits you initially. Emotion is usually what reactions are based on. We don't typically react logically unless you're just that kind of person. And those kind of people do exist. My father is one of those people where when something happens, he's like, oh, sense, reason. And I'm just like, how? But what's more important than reacting is how you respond to things. Responding is on you. It's, what am I going to do about this? Is what I'm going to do about this beneficial to others? Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be effective? Is it going to be kind? Stuff like that we teach our children at the school where I used to work that we can also learn as adults.
Yeah. I think a lot of people nowadays don't know how to give anything other than a reaction. I have had a lot of arguments with people over the internet.
Or punching them at Costco.
I've never punched anyone at Costco, okay?
Over a raisin.
But like, when you're arguing with someone or having a debate or a discussion, a good lot of the time, and like, I'm guilty of this as well, they just get angry if you disagree with what their opinion is or viewpoint is. And I think a lot of people lack the ability to have solid conversations and healthy debates and healthy disagreements. Because we're in a world that basically says, if you disagree with what I have to say, then I automatically have to hate you. Or, on the flip side, they automatically assume that you hate them back.
Yep.
Which is, like, truth be told, a lot of my opinions and viewpoints and beliefs are not gonna agree with a lot of people. But, like, I don't have hate for any of them. Like, I'm like, I want to just talk to you and get to know you as a person. Like, I understand that you don't believe what I believe, and I understand that you don't believe, like, that, I lost myself, and I got lost in the sauce a little bit. All that to say, like, from my perspective, I just understand that we're not going to agree and that we don't have the same beliefs. However, I do think that it is possible to have a healthy, respectful discussion. Because I think that's the other thing. A lot of people lack respect in conversations. Something that we experienced quite recently with someone was once her argument started to, like, once she realized that we weren't really gonna budge on what we believed in or what we had thought, then she started attacking personally.
Yep, that is the common reaction, not a response, but a common reaction to realizing that your argument is invalid or realizing that you are wrong in that scenario, or is to go for personal attacks.
Yeah, that's super true.
I've seen that a lot, especially online.
Oh,
especially
Twitter. Anyone?
I don't know when I'm going to learn my lesson that online debates are typically not productive and not fruitful.
Yeah, that's usually, like, whenever I decide to engage in a conversation. That's why I usually just kind of say my piece and then walk away from it. Because I know that, like, I'm gonna get emotionally invested.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, like, I think I'm getting better at keeping a level head and not getting, like, emotionally invested in a certain thing. But, like, you know, when you feel passionate about something or someone is basically, like, being disrespectful to something that you believe, it's hard not to, like, get upset. Because you're like, wow, you're literally just, like, being so disrespectful to everything that I base my life on. And
it makes you not want to respect them.
Yeah, and, like, that's a lot of the time where I'm like, that's when I'll try and step away, is, like, when I feel myself, like, getting really angry about it. Because I'm not going to drop myself to that level of just petty insults or calling names, or I might think, oh yeah, you're arrogant, but will I say that to them directly? No.
Oh ho ho. I was called arrogant this morning about an issue. And again, it's social media. It's Facebook. No one's minds are really going to be changed on social media. Not that it can never happen. But most of the time it's insulting each other and using tag groups and laughed reacts and memes in order to get a point across rather than engaging in a serious conversation. However, the minute it gets personal, that's when I realize, oh, what's the point? What's the point of engaging in a healthy debate when you can just call me arrogant instead, and I can tell you not to get your panties in a wad? Which I did. I admit. I got snarky. But this individual was attacking something that means a great deal to me. And it's a hill that I will die on. And he said, well, if you weren't so arrogant. And that's basically when the gloves came off. I was like, what'd you say to me? I could have handled it better, but I spoke the truth to him. And I'm hoping that he will go about his day and actually think about what I had to say to him. Probably won't. He'll probably be stuck in his ways, but whatever.
Yeah. Something that I wish people would do more often is, like, I think there comes a point in a conversation, and maybe this could be at the very beginning, I don't know, but there comes a point when you have you ever had a dream?
Have you ever had a dream that
No, I'm just having
a day.
A day. I'm like, I have no mental focus. There comes a point in a conversation when you just need to understand that my mind isn't changed, your mind isn't changed, and that needs to be the end of it. Because I've noticed in conversations, I think pretty much like after that one conversation with that one girl who started personally attacking everyone, there comes a point in a conversation when you just start circling back to initial points. Mm-hmm. Which it's like at that point, everything has pretty much been said, and trying to talk further is pointless.
Yep.
And you just need to, I think people need to learn, like, what point that is. And I think that also shows people, and, like, it shows when they're paying attention. Because, like, if you're not really listening to what the other person has to say, then I think that's when the circling will happen. But once someone pays attention and is like, oh, we've gone over this before. Oh, I remember you said this earlier. Oh, this is literally the point you made.
Circular reasoning.
Like, an hour ago. Mm-hmm. Like, that's when you're like, oh, okay, we need to just, like, end this conversation. Because obviously, like, you know, this isn't getting us anywhere. This conversation's not productive.
And you were the one who pointed that out at the end of that conversation.
Yes, I did. Because I remember sitting there and, like, things had died down for just a second. Mm-hmm. And then the party in question, I don't remember what she had started to say exactly, but I had remembered it from earlier. Mm-hmm. And it was, like, almost, like, word for word what she had said earlier. And I was just like, this is exactly where we started. So I was like, now that this is where we're started, we're probably going to start going into that circle again. And obviously, we're not going to budge on our end. And she clearly isn't going to budge or try to understand on her end. So this conversation needs to stop. Mm-hmm. So.
And it did.
And it did.
Thank the Lord. Because that was nuts.
Yeah.
At the school where I used to work, we employed a method of behavioral correction, and not even correction, but more of, I don't know what's the word, because correction makes it seem like there's a right way and there's a wrong way, but there's all kinds of behaviors and all kinds of ways to address it. So, behavioral modification. There was a program that we subscribed to called Conscious Discipline. And the idea behind Conscious Discipline is to fix and change your own thinking so that you will know how to efficiently encourage a change of thinking in another. Whether it's, in my example, it's students. I want my students to be not prim and proper, but I want them to be able to express themselves in healthy ways, you know, learn how to get what they want efficiently, but if they can't get what they want, how to be okay with that. So conscious discipline, a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't, and that's fine. Everyone has their opinions on it. But it's about behavioral modification in yourself first. It starts with the choices you make, the thoughts that you have, the actions you take. And part of that is the 7 powers for conscious adults. I don't like the idea of calling it powers because we're not like superheroes. We're just humans trying to do a good job. But, 7 powers. Da, 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 da. And 2 of them really mean a lot to me. And what I've learned a lot in conscious discipline is it's not just how I go about my work with my students, but also how I can navigate my everyday relationships with the people in my life. One of these powers is the power of acceptance. The big idea is the moment is how it is. And the goal is to learn to respond to what life offers instead of attempting to make the world go our way. I started getting into the habit, and you've probably heard me say this, just in learning the power of acceptance. When I not even make a mistake, but if something just goes wrong, even if it's a slight inconvenience, like me dropping my phone. If I'm walking and my phone falls out of my pocket, I'll say the word, okay. Just like, oh, that happened. Can I go back and change it? No. It happens. It's the power of acceptance. Accepting what happened and not trying to force my way to happen in the world, because things aren't going to go my way. And I've learned that the more that I try to control things in my life, the more things are going to go wrong because I'm not in control a lot of the time.
Never.
We live in a big, huge, gigantic, chaotic, crazy world.
I don't think we're ever officially in control.
Fully in control.
We're just like, yeah, I'm in control. And you're like, you're not actually.
No, you're not. It's scary how little control we actually have. But we are in control of our behaviors.
That's true.
And our responses.
Yep.
And even our reactions. There is a huge difference, as we discussed, between a reaction and a response. But I've been working on it in my response to things going wrong. Like, if I get stuck at a red light, if I'm like in a hurry, I'm like, oh, I really need to go through this green light. And it turns red. I'm just like, okay, just accepting it. Okay. And another power that's really important is the power of intention. The big idea is mistakes are opportunities to learn. The goal is to teach a new skill rather than punishing others for lacking skills we think they should possess by now. Teaching a new skill. This is the right way to do it. Instead of being like, oh, you did it wrong. What's wrong with you? Now you're being punished. It's offering an alternative. What if we try this way? There's an example that I just had, and I'm losing it. Hold on, I'm losing it.
This episode's a mess.
We're just two hot messes, honestly.
Without the hot.
Without the hot. Oh, so here's an example. If a student wants to play with a toy, she could go up to the boy. She wants to play with the toy. He's playing with it, and she could wrench it out of his hands.
Many children do.
As children tend to do. I could say, give that back. Don't take toys from him. Snatch the toy from her. Give it back to him. What has she learned? Oh, don't do that. Okay, why? She just knows not to do that. She doesn't understand the why, and she doesn't know how to fix it. Or I could go over and say, what can we do? You want to play with that toy. What can we do? And I will give my students the opportunity to problem solve, think for themselves. What can we do? If they don't know what to do, why don't we use our words and say, excuse me, may I please play with that when you're done? She'll go over, use her words. 95% of the time, the kid will be like, yeah, sure, and hand it over. Problem solved. But if he doesn't, and she's like, I used my words. I said, you did a good job using your words. That was really kind. Why don't we go play with something else? And when he's done playing with this toy, then you can play with it.
At that point, then the other child probably forgets about the toy entirely.
That's exactly what happens. And that's a lot of teachers' goals. Oh, let's just get them to forget. But instead of telling kids, here, do this, or more often than not, teachers will tell kids what not to do. But I learned in child psychology that it's actually better to give them a positive command. Children respond better to positive commands. Walking feet rather than negative commands. Don't run. I can't remember what the reason is. I remember the director of my school telling me it's because kids will cling on to the last word that they hear. So if they hear the words don't run, what sticks in their heads is not the don't, but the run part. So they'll be like, run? I don't know how true that is. That's just something that she shared with me. But I have found that positive commands work a lot more efficiently than negative commands. Walking feet. Nice hands. Instead of, don't do that. It's do this. Alternative. It's so crazy how we can teach so much to children and then not apply it to our own lives.
Oh, I know.
If something goes wrong for me, I want to throw a fit. I want to get upset. If I get stuck at a red light and I'm in a hurry, I want to curse and get mad and, make angry whale noises. But why don't I just learn from my students, take a deep breath, use the power of acceptance? Is there anything that I can do about being stuck at this red light? Nope. I'm not going to run it. I don't want a ticket. I don't want to get into a car crash. So what am I going to do? Nothing. Just sit here and wait for the light to turn green. So the power of acceptance, accept as it is, which is what Margaret will say. It's accepting what happens.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Whatever will be, will be. And the power of intention. Mistakes are the opportunity to learn.
I kind of liked your red light analogy.
Oh, thank you.
There is a point of just accepting and just, it is what it is. But I think kind of what you said of like, oh, I'm here. What can I do about this? Sometimes, like, I would say probably more often than not, there is something you can do about it.
Yep.
There are points, like, where you literally just can't do anything, and that's fine. Like, there's only so much control we have. There's only so much action we can take, but I think it's a good idea to take that action when it's available. Like, I was dealing with a lot of really bad negative emotions a couple years ago, like just a lot of anger, and like I was having a really hard time like dealing with that and processing it in a healthy way. And like, I'd gone through a lot of crap, and I was just having a hard time with like, I guess, emotional regulation. But like, I don't have the coping skills for that. I didn't learn that growing up. So it was procrastinated action, but action nonetheless. I decided to start therapy, and that was very helpful in like dealing with my emotions. And so I think like definitely taking that time to stop and be like, okay, I feel like this, or this has just happened, and then what can I do about it? If it's nothing, then let it go. If you can do something about it, then do something about it. That's kind of what I've been, I guess, for like more or less so like teaching myself in terms of like conflict and conflict resolution. Conflict is not like dealing with conflict and like taking it head on is not a natural inclination for me. Didn't learn that growing up either. But I was kind of just fed up with feeling fed up all the time. And just feeling frustrated. So I kind of was like, I need to take action, even if this is uncomfortable, because conflict is not comfortable at all. It's very hard, and it's not a pleasant thing, but, sometimes we just have to do things that aren't pleasant for the sake of moving forward. And so, like, that's kind of what I've been learning, and also just being more open in terms of, like, communication, and not just, like, if something's bothering me, not just brushing it aside and being like, oh, this isn't a big deal. Like, if something is bothering me, just simply asking someone, hey, this is how I feel. Can you either explain this to me, or how can we move forward with this?
Yeah, seek counsel. Talk about it. How many problems in this world can be solved through conversation? Yeah.
Or, like, even if you have, like, a problem with someone else, too, going to that person, telling them, this makes me feel like this, or what you said or did, or, like, just, communication.
Yes!
It's not just a thing for romantic relationships. Because I think a lot of people, like, I don't know, for me personally, I always like kind of, things are in their own little sections.
Mm-hmm.
Like, boundaries are in romantic relationships. Communication are in this box. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's how, like, everyone tends to think, but, like, that's how I think some of the time.
Like, compartmentalizing.
Yeah, sort of. But, like, you know, a lot of people say that the key to a good relationship, like, in a romantic sense, is communication. But I think, like, taking it outside of that romantic relationship box is helpful. At least for me personally. Because communication is for any relationship you have. Mm-hmm. Your relationship with your boss, your relationship with your coworkers, your relationship with your best friends, your relationship with your close friends, with your general friends, with your romantic partner, with your parents, with your siblings, like any and all relationships, like communication it's going to help you in the long run. And even if conflict is uncomfortable, it's still important.
Yeah.
So
conflict isn't inherently a bad thing. It's how we learn to communicate, how we learn to change ourselves, because we are the only ones who can change ourselves. We're the only ones who can make our choices for us. Yeah, we can have counsel, we can have influence, we can go to trusted friends for advice, but when it comes down to it, the only one who's going to make decisions for ourselves is ourselves.
And also, like, if someone is wanting to engage in conflict with you, going back to earlier about the, what is it, response?
Oh, reaction versus response.
Yeah, going back to earlier with reaction versus response. Like, if someone has a problem, I think it's pretty natural for people to kind of take offense a little bit. But also, yes, that's a natural reaction. But also pushing past that natural state of offense and really listening to what they have to say.
Look at the heart behind it.
Look
at the motivation behind it. Last night, I got a text from a friend who had lovingly called me out on kind of copping an attitude. And my initial reaction was, I didn't cop an attitude.
As you cop an attitude.
As I cop an attitude about it. So I do admit, initially, I did feel that offense. I was like, how dare you? You know? And then I thought, wait a minute. Did I cop an attitude? And I thought about it. I didn't react. I did react, but not to her. I reacted to myself. But
which I think is normal.
It's natural.
But, like, taking it beyond yourself and just, like, if you would have just lashed out and not taken that second to think about it, then that would have created a whole other slew of issues.
If I had texted her back right after I read it, it would not have been it would have been a reaction, not a response. But I had a whole drive home to think about it. And by the end of that drive, I realized, oh, I did cop an attitude. I had time to think about it, and I apologized. And of course, because she is, like, the most loving person ever, but also not afraid to tell the truth and be like, yo, you need to recognize this. She was like, wow, it's all good. And she understood. So that situation could have gone a whole lot worse if I had reacted instead of responding. So friends, learn from my mistakes, because I have done this. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm speaking from experience. Do not respond to a text that makes you angry right away. Take a second, put your phone down, breathe, think about, who is this person to me and what are they really trying to say? Was she trying to hurt me by what she said? No, absolutely not. She's my friend and she was checking on me to make sure I was okay, but at the same time, she was addressing something that needed to be addressed. Now, there have been conversations when the addressing can go about differently. You can bring things up in a gentler manner. I can bring things up in a gentler manner. But you have to think about what is the heart behind what is being said. And if it's not addressed right, then that is something else to be addressed. Don't snap at me. But then that can get defensive, because that probably would have been my reaction last night when she said, you copped an attitude. My initial reaction was, don't snap at me. I would have gotten defensive. That in turn probably would have gotten her defensive. It would not have been a productive conversation.
Yep.
But it was a productive conversation. Thank goodness.
Which is good.
Because I care about my friendship with her. She cares about our friendship. And she was doing the right thing. And now we're good.
Yeah. And see, like, it all ended well.
It ended so well. Because, honestly, we need more conversation in this world. What was the word I just used?
You said we need more conversation in this
just
world.
One. Singular. We need a conversation. Capital
And then that's
C.
it.
That's it.
One
no
conversation
more.
And that's it.
I wish. We need more conversations in this world that have a healthy balance of love and truth. Because if it's all truth and no love, it's rigid. If it's all love and no truth, it's far too compromising. And it's wishy-washy. And quite frankly, it's not true love. That's why boundaries are so important in a relationship. Boundaries are for the sake of relationship, not to damage the relationship, not to hurt or limit the relationship. No, but to grow the relationship.
Yeah.
I am about to start reading a book called Boundaries: When to Say Yes, How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend.
There we go.
There we go. Yay! Celebrate the little victories. No, but it talks about boundaries in everyday relationships. Like you were saying earlier, we always attribute healthy communication as a necessity in romantic relationships. Little do we know, healthy communication is a necessity in any given relationship, romantic or platonic or even casual.
Yeah.
Same with boundaries. Boundaries are important. It's important to be on the same page, to know what the needs of the other person are, that they would know your needs. It has been a lifesaver in so many of my relationships.
We have a couple of just, per the usual episode, we have a couple of just bullet points that we kind of wrote beforehand. One of them is, what does taking responsibility mean? And it's being honest when you've done wrong. Because if you're just, I don't know, there's a lot that goes into taking responsibility. I think owning up to what you did, apologizing for what you did, trying to make it right, which sometimes apologizing is really all you can do. But it's also, these types of things are not one-sided. There has to be grace and forgiveness on the other half as well. So
there are, like you said, a number of different definitions for responsibility. What you just said is one of them, just according to the dictionary. The state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. That was the one you described really well. One of them is the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone, which is one that I really like because it gives me the example of taking ownership. If I go to a dog park with my dog, and there's someone else there, I'm not going to give them my dog and say, that's your dog. That's not my dog. That's your dog. And they're going to look at me and be like, dude, go away. I don't want your dog. So it's about taking ownership. Yes, this is mine. This is my burden to bear. This is my problem to solve.
And not blaming other people.
Yeah.
I think this isn't to victim blame people or anything like that, but it's really easy to if you had a hard childhood and your parents didn't love you like they should have, as parents should, or were abusive or anything like that, there is definitely responsibility on their part for what they did to you. but you can't use that as a cop-out for your own bad behaviors. Like, if you're just a jerk because, oh, my parents didn't love me, or, oh, like, I was abused by this person, or, you know, any kind of bad situation, and you use that as a reason to be rude, have an attitude,
lash out.
Like, if that's like your argument for yourself, or like, I don't know what else, but
take ownership.
Don't, like, they will have their day of judgment, but that is them, and they will be responsible for what they did. But you also need to be responsible for what you do. I don't know if you remember that one girl from, like, forever ago who we met at... Yeah. So there was a girl that we met, I don't know, it's been like 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
And, you know, she, from what I understood, she had a lot of really traumatic things happen. And there was a slight quarrel at some point, and she very aggressively lashed out at, I think, both you and me.
Yeah, she pulled us aside specifically.
Yeah, and, like, she was not very nice in her approach. And that wasn't the first time that had happened since we met her. She also, I think, kind of did that to someone else.
It wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
Yeah.
Again, addressing it incorrectly.
Yeah, and, like, you know, I understand that stuff had gone on in her life, but also that's not an excuse to yell at someone or to be mean to someone or be aggressive with someone over, like, anything.
Or threaten them. Because she threatened us. I remember that very specifically.
Oh, I don't even... What did she say? I don't even remember.
She said, because then you're going to have to deal with me.
Oh, yes.
Something to that extent.
Oh, I do remember that.
And I just wanted to laugh, because I was like, you're like 4 foot tall. What are you going to do? But that doesn't excuse her threats. As non-threatening as she was, that's still not okay.
No. No matter your size or shape, if you're trying to threaten someone...
And
get out.
Our emphasis on taking personal ownership, we can't stress this enough. That does not mean you have to do it on your own, by yourself. There is help out there, and you should get help if you need it. You should reach out to others. We're not meant to do this life alone. But that doesn't mean letting others take the fall for you, blaming others for what's wrong with you, holding everyone else responsible for the things that go holding others responsible for the things that go wrong in your life and not taking any of that responsibility on your own. There is a huge difference between saying, I need help, I can't do this on my own, and saying, I didn't do anything wrong. It's society to blame. It's my upbringing to blame. It's my ex to blame. It's literally everybody else's problem, but not mine. I'm just a victim.
And also, like, even, obviously, like, asking for help is important, but not fully relying on others as well. Like, my coworker, someone, I think that she lives with, will just come home and basically, like, just dump all her problems onto her.
Oh.
And it's, like, for my coworker, it's very stressful and uncomfortable because she's like, you know, that's a lot for one person to take on.
Sounds exhausting.
And, yeah. Like, and we shouldn't use others as our crutches. At least for very long periods of time. Like, sometimes we do need a lot of assistance and a lot of help, but if you become fully dependent on them, like, when you have an issue, and you're like, I don't know how to do anything on my own. Like, that's also an issue, too.
Yep. Grow up!
Yeah.
You mentioned how you realized that enough was enough in your emotional struggles, and you took responsibility for that by going to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great choice that you made for yourself. You're not just going to go to therapy and listen to what your therapist has to say and be like, oh, okay, I went to therapy, and then nothing changes. Mm-hmm. It's about personal application, right? Doing your homework, learning from her, learning from your sessions. I had to do something very similar on the physical side of things. I had a medical diagnosis in March. You know, it's nothing major, but it was serious enough where I was tired of feeling like crap every day. And I finally had to say, you know what, I'm sick and I need to go to the doctor, after months of saying, oh yeah, I should probably go to the doctor. But it took me reaching the point of feeling like crap every single day and struggling and suffering every single day of my life to be like, you know what? No one's going to go to the doctor for me. I just got to get off my butt and go to the doctor. And it's not just about going to the doctor, you know, taking the medicine, going through the treatments, getting the help that I need, but recognizing my personal ownership in that. Like, yeah, I could go to the doctor and get medicine, but is that enough? Shouldn't I be making better, healthier choices for myself? Drinking more water, getting more sleep, exercising.
Taking your meds on time.
Taking my meds on time. Nervously tugs at collar. It's not all up to my doctor to fix me. He's not my crutch. He can help, but I'm the one who has to make those choices.
Yeah. It's all about personal initiative.
Responsibility.
Yay, responsibility.
Responsibility.
So one of our other questions is, how does it make you feel when somebody lets you down, and also when you let somebody else down?
Ugh. So I'm a people pleaser, and one of my top love languages is words of affirmation. Quality time too, but words of affirmation is high up there, probably tied with quality time. I like impressing people, but I also like doing a good job. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I don't like making mistakes, and more importantly, I don't like being called out on those mistakes. So when I realize that I let someone down, I take it super hard. Even if it's something so small, like the story that I shared a few weeks ago about not grabbing the bag with the key during a fire drill.
Oh, yeah.
I felt awful for that. And you know what my teacher did? She grabbed the bag and that was it. She's like, oh, either she grabbed the bag or someone else grabbed the bag and that was it. It's not like she held it against me for the rest of the day. It's not like she went and told the other teachers what a failure I was. But I had built it up in my head as this ultra mistake that was going to cost me my job and tarnish my reputation as being a reliable source. So I had basically just built it up in my head that I was the worst person ever for making a tiny little mistake. So I tend to take it super personally. I take it really hard. But if someone lets me down, it's kind of a bummer, but we get over it, right? Someone lets me down and I'm just like, oh, okay. That's a bummer. Moving on. So why can't I get that in my own head?
Yeah, right?
I'm working on it.
For me, it's like it's kind of a level of different things. I feel pretty kind of awful about myself when I let someone else down. Like, there was a lot of stress with a particular very significant responsibility at my job, and it's a very small, the thing that I missed was a very small thing, but it had happened a few times over the last couple months, and so my boss was like, let me clarify my expectation for this thing, and I was like, I felt kind of crappy about it. I was like, and it just made me feel bad. But I was also just like, how can I remember to do this on a more frequent basis? So instead of having it on my to-do list on my, like I have like a virtual one on my computer, I wrote down on a sticky note.
Oh, yes.
The one, like, the thing, and I cut it so it was small and it wasn't in the way, and I just put it on my screen.
Excellent.
As just a reminder to myself of, like, this is something that I need to make sure that I do. Because it's not a regular part of my job. Mm-hmm. It's kind of case specific. So it's not always on my mind.
The science of writing something down, man. Yeah. It's so helpful. It is so beneficial.
So, yeah, I wrote it down, put it somewhere where I know I would look at it, and, you know, it's there for when I need to see it.
Yeah, making mistakes is fine and dandy if you take ownership of them and learn from them.
And figure out how to fix it, too. Yeah. Like, sometimes there's not much you can do, but in, like, the case of, like, oh, I'm making a mistake at work, like, for me, I have my virtual to-do list, but for this thing that I keep missing, I needed something more outside of my computer and visual.
Yep, that's an important place to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah,
is your job.
Work. Yeah,
just like, oh well, I made a mistake. It's like, okay, what are we gonna do about it?
Yep. And then when it comes to like other people letting me down, I've learned for me personally, it's kind of like a tier system. Like, not that I try to hold things against people.
Like 3 strikes and you're out?
Yeah, like, it's definitely not like that. Like, if someone lets me down, like, once or twice, and I'm like, okay, that was disappointing, but let me try to move on. But there does come a point where it's like, this has been a lot of times.
Yeah.
What do I do about this? And then I'm just like a little bit, not like annoyed with them, but it's a little tiresome.
Well, it affects the relationship after a while. Because you start wondering, am I getting more good than bad out of this relationship? Do boundaries need to be established?
Are they listening?
They listening? Does there need to be a talk? Like, you and I are both people who would hope that we have the kind of friends, and I believe we do, but we would have the kind of friends where if there is an issue, it would be addressed for the sake of protecting the friendship and growing the relationship and growing you as a person, rather than the people who are just going to be like, okay, that's fine, and then go talk about us behind their backs, and nothing gets done, and that just severs the relationship.
Yeah, I have a really, really recent example of, not that I was, like, let down over something significant, but, like, if someone is just straightforward, this is how I feel about this thing, then I think I'm a lot more willing to not only, like, give grace, but also, like, I miss stuff in that regard a lot of the time. Like, if some, like in the area of, like, oh, you have some kind of problem with me, whether it's big or small, but, like, there's a friend that I have, and there was something that made them uncomfortable, and I didn't know that until after the fact. And during the conversation where they told me that, I was like, please, if something like that happens again, like, just tell me so that I can understand. And, like, I don't feel like I'm a hard person to communicate with.
No,
like,
you're really not.
So I'm like, I don't know what the deal is. And then, like, something sort of similar-ish. Like, there was just a lack of explaining how they were feeling. And they tried to get help from someone else to tell me about it. And I'm like, for one, that's gonna piss me off. And also, I don't want to listen to it out of the mouth of someone else.
Right.
I'm like, that's your place to tell me about it. And it wasn't, like, a big thing, but it still, like, got under my skin a little bit. Just because I was like, I told you in the past. I'm like, if there's a problem, if there's an issue, just tell me. And, like, be straight up.
Wait, Eleanor, you mean that you're not expected to know how your friends feel at all times?
Believe it or not, I am not a mind reader.
Whoa! We're not mind readers. We're not gonna know how you feel unless you address it with us.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. That was my life growing up, was a lot of people wanting to keep the peace and not talking about how they really felt, so we're just always walking on eggshells around each other and watching what we say because we don't dare offend. God forbid we have an adult conversation.
Yeah.
That was my life.
That's something that, like, annoys me a lot, is when people walk on eggshells with other people. I understand that, like, that's, like, when I go over to your house, I really just want to, like, say things just to, like, for the purpose of that. Like, because I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I understand, like, that's how you were raised and, like, that's how your family functioned. Mm-hmm. But, like, there's something in me that's just like, I want to create chaos in this space. And
my ex used to do that. Surprise, surprise. My ex used to do that a lot. And of course, he went about it wrong. So there was always conflict whenever he came over. There was always arguments. And I kind of got what he was trying to do, but the way he went about it was just wrong. And it just created a lot of anger, and nothing ever got solved. It was just fighting and speaking, or excuse me, what is the phrase? Listening to answer instead of listening to understand. I think that's the quote. Also learned that from my school director.
I think there's a lot of power and significance in understanding.
Yes, ma'am. Do we have one more question? Oh, we do. Which is kind of a given, but I suppose we can go over it anyway.
Yeah.
Do you think there is any connection between being responsible and being trusted? Between being responsible and being respected? Yeah. I want to be a person that people can rely on, that people can depend on. I am deathly afraid of failure and making a mistake, but that doesn't mean that I don't want people to entrust me with responsibilities. And we were just having this conversation earlier where if you can be trusted with a little, then that gives the assumption that you can be trusted with a lot. But if you can't be trusted with a little thing, then how can anyone expect you to be trusted with a big thing?
Right?
If I can't be trusted to grab a bag with a key on it, no. That's a bad example because I was very quickly forgiven for that. I was like, whoopsie daisy, I'll do it next time. And I did do it next time.
I mean, there are things that are just so small that it's like,
why are you crying?
There are things that are so small that, like, that's not going to break someone's confidence in you.
Yeah.
There are definitely things where you're like, oh, I just messed up real big time. And you're like, yikes. That's gonna cause a significant drop in what this person thinks I can be responsible for. But I think there are small, like, there's just things where you're just like, oh, this didn't happen. Okay.
Problem solved.
If it's like if you're piling on the small things all the time.
Right.
All the time. Oh, it's like this little thing. Oh, and this little thing. Oh, and this little thing. Like one or two small things are like, that's not a big deal.
If there's a pattern.
Yeah.
A noticeable pattern.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
Is causing a pattern. I'm like, oh, if I mess up one more time, I'm going to lose, my trust. Like, an example of this the other day is, this was completely my bad. Again, I wanted to take ownership over it, but I repeated information to somebody that I thought was already aware of a certain situation, and it turns out they were not aware of the situation, and I felt really bad because that information had been told to me in confidence. So repeating it to someone that I just assumed already knew about it, that was my mistake. I should not have been repeating it. So I ended up going to both parties, the person that I talked to and the person who initially talked to me, and saying, I'm really sorry. I did not mean to repeat this information. I want you to be able to trust me. And of course, they were both super understanding and forgiving. The person who talked to me initially was like, I'm not offended. And then the person that I talked to was like, don't worry about it. It's something that I was probably going to figure out eventually. No harm done. But even though that was a little thing and I was forgiven for it, that is something that I need to keep in mind for the future, and I can learn from. It's not to repeat information just because I'm under the assumption, oh, we're all friends, they probably know. Because when I figured out this person did not know and they were hearing it firsthand from me, I felt like an a-hole. I was like, whoopsie doodles. I repeated information that was told to me in confidence. So it's fine now. Everything's fine. But that is a learning opportunity, is what can I do better next time? How about keep my mouth shut? You know?
For sure.
I think that's all.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Any closing comments? I think we've talked significantly for an hour and 13 minutes.
We did awesome. This. Be an adult. Be responsible. Take ownership. Don't take your dog to the dog park and try to hand it off to someone else. That's your responsibility. You take ownership. That is your dog.
For sure. Well, I think that is about all that we had for this episode. Big thank you to everyone who has been... is that actually English?
To Ben has.
A big thank you to everyone who has listened to the podcast so far. There's been a good, 2 to 3 people who have listened on a regular basis.
We love you!
For 10 episodes. This is, 9. This is episode 10. Wow. Amazing. So, I can't believe we made it to 10 episodes.
We sure did.
You know,
here's to 10 more.
I know.
And then we're done.
20 episodes and that's it. No. I hope we can continue on with this for 100 episodes. And
yes.
We just appreciate all of the awesome support. So thank you if you listen on a regular basis. Whether you're on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or you listen on Anchor. Just any support is helpful, and we appreciate you greatly.
Oh, and a special shout out to our older listeners. We have a wonderful base of listeners ranging from all ages, and we just want to thank you so much for investing in the opinions of two 20-somethings, because that means a lot to us. The fact that we're not just speaking to a very specific group of people. You know, it's like there's a lot of people out there, different ages, different cities, different states, different countries that care about what we have to say. And that makes Two Girls feel pretty darn good. So thank you. Older and younger, Australian and Kiwi and... What was the other one? Did we have one from...
Wait, did we have a Kiwi listener?
I thought we did.
I don't know.
If we don't, then I'll change it.
So all of our geography comes from the United States.
Oh, I thought we had one in Australia.
No. But we have 3% of our viewers is 60 plus.
30%. That's so weird. I don't know why I thought that we had listeners in different countries. Well, wherever you come from, thank you so much for caring about what we have to say and our opinions and our experiences. And I've told Eleanor this before, that if everything that I've gone through, if all the crap that I've suffered through over the years can change one person's life, can affect one person and make a positive difference, then it's all worth it. And I would do it all again for that one person who can be changed by my story.
Yep. I know we're not the most organized people.
We never claim to be.
There's a lot of whenever I edit, there's a lot of very long pauses between points, and Sometimes repeating stuff, sometimes forgetting things super quickly. But
forgetting the English language. I do that regularly.
And yeah, listening to anything from our episodes about depression and mental health to us reading Marianne's very crappy story.
That was awesome.
Or fan fictions. Or taking BuzzFeed quizzes.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's nice to at least know that we have an audience, no matter how big or small. It's appreciated that people want to listen.
Very much so.
So, with that, if you want to hit us up on Twitter, I'm on there probably way too much.
I'm on there never.
Follow us on our Instagram, which has been severely neglected. I realized that the other day. I was like, I haven't posted Instagram in a very long time.
Shame.
But anyway, if you want to follow us on YouTube, subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Eleanorium, Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz. Give us a 5-star rating if you would be so kind, because it really helps us out. Anyway, we will see you all in the next one. Goodbye. Mwah.
Mwah.